Hi, I'm Eric Gadby, and I have been an enthusiast for all things nautical and aerospace since the age of 10. I served for 22 years in the U.S. Submarine Force and have been supporting it for the last 15 years since retiring. Join me as I pursue my passion for first-person context for ships, aircraft, and historic sites that have shaped our world, as well as some that are off the beaten path. Welcome to Roy, Utah, just north of Salt Lake City, home to Hill Air Force Base and the Hill Aerospace Museum. This is the fifth and final episode of my in-depth tour of the museum with Lieutenant Colonel Mark Hasara, U.S. Air Force retired, call sign Sluggo. Mark is a former KC-135 pilot, the author of the best-selling book Tanker Pilot, Lessons from the Cockpit, public speaker, host of the Lessons from the Cockpit show on YouTube, and is a small business owner of Wall Pilot Custom Aviation Graphics. In addition to these, Mark is a great friend and mentor.
Gates. Let's
talk about this one.
Okay, so the cargo bay of the C-5 is longer than the Wright brothers' Wright Flyer first flight. The wingspan of the B-36 is longer than its first 3 flights. Okay, individually, not collectively.
Not collectively.
Okay. But to all your listeners, look at this, man. That's just like canvas and dope and wood, you know? And then you turn around and you look at something like this, you know?
Less than 50 years later.
Less than 50 years later, yeah. Less than 50 years later, man. We're flying these things, okay? And, you know, to all your folks out there, this is my favorite airplane from World War II. I mean, one of them, okay? Everybody loves P-51s, you know, and that's kind of a given, okay? But in my mind, Mark Hasara's mine. If I was rich and famous, I'd buy one of these and fly it around. I love this airplane. I love what this airplane did, particularly from this unit, right? The Air Apaches. One of the best books you can read is called Warpath Across the Pacific, and it's about the Air Apaches, and it's chock full of incredible pictures of these B-25s doing these low-level bombing and strafing missions. I mean, just freaking incredible. And that's why I love this airplane, particularly this version of it, which was the up-gun version of it, okay? Imagine you've got 8 forward-firing 50 cal, 8 more on the cheeks, okay, or 4 more. You got 12 forward-firing 50 caliber guns, right? And then you include like the top turret up there, and it's 50 cal. You would come blazing down the Japanese runway with 12 to 14 forward-firing 50 caliber machine guns. Let's not even talk about the bombs, right? And real quickly, I think that's the other thing I want to talk about too, Eric, is they would drop bombs, 25-pound bombs wrapped in wire, okay? God, what's the name of the wire? Barbed wire, okay? To make it a fragmentation bomb, right? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They carry 500-pound bombs, 250-pound bombs, but they wrap the 250-pound bombs in barbed wire, right? To make them more lethal, so that there'd be more shrapnel, right? And the guy that created this whole thing, his name was Pappy Gunn. I think his first name was George Pappy Gunn. And he's the guy that invented the low-level strafing bombing missions for the Air Apaches. And the book Warpath Across the Pacific is probably one of the top 3 best World War II unit histories that you'll ever read. And I think it's available on Amazon now too.
Yep, and
I mean, it's just an incredible airplane.
and the first bombs that we dropped on mainland Japan
Came from a B-25, yeah.
took off from a Navy carrier.
Took off from a Navy carrier and a B-25, yeah.
So they had these.
I want you to imagine, this was one of the largest fighters in World War II. And you look at the F-15s in the back and you go, this thing ain't very big at all. Now, this is in the paint scheme of a guy named Glenn T. Eggleston. Why it's got the eagle on it. And you can see he shot down a lot of training airplanes. Right? Glenn T. Eggleston is his name. And obviously he has that eagle on there for a reason. But he's got a fascinating history too. All right. This is getting really busy.
It's a place to be on a Saturday afternoon.
So much snow everywhere. So this was one of the B-29s that was involved in these drops. And you see the scoreboard up there, okay? The fat man, okay? They're all black except for one. And that was because this one was on one of those missions. It didn't drop the bomb, but it was escorting, I think, Enola Gay on the first one.
Okay.
All right, if I remember right. The reason I know that is because we have a B-29 at the Pease Gate, right? It's also got the straight flush on it. It's got the history of straight flush, right? This, I don't think this one is the real straight flush. Actually, there it is. There's a picture of it up there on the wall. Look at it.
Would it be a Tinian?
Yeah, Tinian. See it? There's a picture of it. I think the straight flush that they have in Pease is the real one. But again, this one was an escort on I think the Enola Gay mission. The first nuclear weapons drop, you know, crazy. Here's part of the Norton bomb site up there, classified bomb site. First gyroscopically alarmed bomb site. Winston the Bulldog. Guys would actually fly with their oh, you want a great bulldog story? Bitburg Air Base in Germany.
Okay.
I think they're the 525th Fighter Squadron, Tactical Fighter Squadron. They're called the Bulldogs, and they wanted a bulldog. And so, when you want to get a British bulldog, where do you go from Germany? They go to Great Britain, and they flew over to Great Britain and somehow acquired a British bulldog. Well, they're flying in F-15s. How do you get a bulldog home in your F-15? Well,
Drug him?
put him in Bay 5 with all the electronics and ECM and stuff, okay? Because it's just a flat floor. And of course, they flew him home. Well, going across the channel, if you're an F-15 squadron, your bulldog's got to be a supersonic bulldog. And so they went supersonic over the channel. All right? And so they could say that their bulldog was a supersonic bulldog.
Nice.
They got back to the base and they said, okay, we got to name the bulldog, okay? And they named the bulldog Apex after a Russian air-to-air missile on MiG-23s, okay? But his call sign was Pexer, all right? And one of the unique things about Pexer was he hated road cones, orange
traffic cones,
road cones. And so, if you wanted to get Pexer riled up and fight with Pexer, they had a road cone, that one of those plastic road cones in the squadron, that every Friday they'd bring Pexer into the bar and they'd start tossing that road cone around, and Pexer would go freaking nuts. And he'd be chewing on that thing, you know, and fighting with guys, you know, and everything. And that's the story of the 525th Tactical Fighter Squadron's mascot, Bulldog, Pexer. Yeah, it took him supersonic across the channel.
The Navy's got their goat. So.
Yeah, Navy's got their goat, 525th. And I think the 525th has been reactivated. I think it's one of the F-22 squadrons at Elmendorf. So they got the 90th and I think the 525th. You probably know more about B-17s than I do.
Honestly, I just superficial, mostly.
You know, I've been in a B-25 and I've walked through a B-17 at Oshkosh. Folks, there's so much you can say about this airplane. You know,
It's a favorite at Reno.
this is the favorite of the. Oh, I will tell you something I recently learned. Okay, when you hear them flying now, they whine, they whistle. Okay, when they're doing certain things. Okay. And I was doing a YouTube post, Eric, and I was trying to figure out, you know, why does this one whine and this one doesn't? All right. You know what I found out? It's the gun ports. It's the airflow going over the gun ports. When they're pulling some G's, it's the airflow over the gun ports. All right. And you, of course, the Merlin engine's got its own very, very distinct sound. But you'll hear this whining sound. Okay. And I went online, I said, you know, what's causing that? And people were saying, oh, no, it's the Merlin engine. But then I found out from a bunch of other folks, they said, no, it's not the Merlin engine. It's actually the airflow going over the gun ports, okay? So there you have it, crazy as that sounds. But this was the airplane that won World War II. And this was easily, could be called the F-22 of its time.
Yes, not only did it have high performance, but it had range.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I know the difference. So the radial engine P-47, 1.8 miles per gallon. This one, double. It's 3.3, almost double. All right. It originally did not come with the gas tank behind the seat, and that was an extra 85 gallons they put in it. All right. And then the first flew was 75. They went all the way up to 110, but the guys in the Pacific were flying with P-38 tanks that held 175 gallons. So they went a long way, okay? A long way. And one of the guys that was coming over to teach them how to fly those long-range missions, believe it or not, was Lindberg, Charles Lindberg.
Charles Lindberg.
Would go through the Pacific and teach guys how to fly long-range. But as you can see, this is not a big airplane, all right? But the technology in this thing at this time period was amazing. The gun sight on the throttle, there's a cable and it's hooked to the gun sight, and you could change the size of the reticle by twisting the throttle. All right, and it actually has a meter in front of it that says ME-109, Focke-Wulf 190, ME-110. JU-88 and everything.
Different size.
With the little marker, you twist it and put the thing on the marker, and the reticle, the aiming reticle, would collapse and expand based on the airplane you were shooting at. Something that had never been done before. And it was also one of the gyroscopically aligned ones too, okay? I think it's called K4 gun sight. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a World War II guy. the other thing, obviously, the radiator underneath. They actually got a tiny bit of jet power of the airflow going through and out the back of the radiator.
Oh,
there's
the turbofan pulling.
Yeah, pulling air through the scoop and then it expanding as it goes out the back. It actually gave it some jet propulsion, I'm told, right? The laminar flow wings and the way that the fuselage and wings were all set up. And the crazy thing you have to remember about this airplane is it was designed on a napkin on a train. And it went from a design on a napkin on a train to, I think, the first prototype in like 120 days, 150 days, something crazy, And you have to remember, back then, they didn't have computers to do all the three-dimensional work, 3D drawing like we have now. They're drawing it by hand. All of the drawings that they're making for all the dies and everything, they're doing by hand. They're using a slide rule to do all the computations on this thing. Aero engineers back then didn't have the tools that we have now to create this thing.
No computational models. They had wind tunnels and to an extent.
There's a crazy story about the engine. They were first with Allison engines, and this was a British airplane. The Brits were going to buy all these, all right? And the Brits wanted like a ground attack airplane that, is the A-36 Apache, which is the forerunner of this. Well, the first ones had the Allison engines in them, which were really good up to Bay 22,000 feet. Tommy Hitchcock was the air attaché to England at the time. He was a P-51 pilot and an Air Force pilot. And one of the test pilots at Rolls-Royce said this thing is way underpowered. He flew it, and God, I can't remember his name. He flew it, he goes, this thing is way underpowered. You need to put one of our Merlin engines in it, okay? And so they took 10 B models, they call it like Mustang X or something like that, and they put Merlin engines in it. And the performance was just phenomenal, right? 3.3 miles per gallon, just gobs and gobs of power. And the performance on this thing, now it went from like 22,000 feet to like 42,000 feet and had a top speed of like 435, 440 right out of the barn. And nobody would put the engine in it because of politics.
We've never seen that before.
Went to yeah. Heaven forbid that ever happened. So Hitchcock comes back to the States, and he's going to all these people in Washington, and they're like going, no, it's got to be American made, got to be American made. And so they said, okay, well, let's go find somebody. Well, who makes cars? Oh, Henry Ford. So they go to Ford first, and he's an isolationist. He doesn't want America to be in the war. He doesn't want to expand the war. He doesn't want to do any of that stuff. And Henry Ford was a little arrogant, okay, and says, I'll build them, but I'm going to build them my way, and only my way. Well, it was a $130 million contract. You know what $130 million was back in 42, 43, 44?
Billions.
Billions of dollars, okay? I mean, extremely lucrative, right? Well, Tommy Harker and Tommy Hitchcock say to Henry Ford, you can go pound sand. And all of these political guys would kind of get involved. No, you gotta let him do it, No, we ain't letting him do it. And so they said, okay, who is the next best engine builder in Detroit? David and Doug Packard. And the rest is history. They go to David and Doug Packard of the Packard Motor Company, and they go, we want to make these in the United States. David and Doug Packard look at the engineering drawings, look at the performance of everything, and they go, can we make improvements to this? And do this with Rolls-Royce and share it with you guys, okay? And they go, well, absolutely. They said, look, here's some of the things that I think we need to do. And it was the two-stage supercharger. that allowed them to go to like freaking 42,000 feet. That two-stage supercharger basically allowed them to keep sea level pressure all the way up to like 30,000 feet. All right. The gas, they went to 100 octane gas instead of 87. All right, higher lead content, greater combustion. And there was one other thing, Eric, and I can't remember what it is. I'll find this article and send it to you, okay? Because when I wrote the history chapter in my book, I wrote a bunch of chapters on history, and I included the change from the J57 engines to the CFM56, and I compared it to up-engineering, putting Merlin engines in the 51. And that's where I read this story. Okay, I found an article on how this came about. So finally, Doug Packard basically take a whole portion of their place and wall it off, and they start making the Packard Merlin engine. And they had a different designation of it, like 1460 or something, that would say, okay, this is a Packard Merlin. But they were so good, the engines were so good and so effective and efficient and so reliable that they started putting them in everything. And Rolls-Royce started building the same ones in England as they were building here. So the Packard Merlin engine wasn't going to make it into the P-51, and they had to overcome a lot of challenges in order to do it. But it gave this airplane the performance to literally chase down any Luftwaffe airplane, certainly any Japanese airplane. I mean, it run circles a lot around the Japanese airplanes, but it was because of the engine and some of the design changes, like the radiator and the wings and the fuselage. Okay? But yeah, this was the F-22 of its time, and folks, these are still flying.
Yes, they are.
You can go to Oshkosh, you can go to Reno. These things are still flying.
Or watch Tom Cruise on.
Yeah, Tom Cruise owns a 44 model. Okay, and I want you to think about that. This airplane was made in 44, right? And oh, by the way, see it says P-51B-5. So this is one of the earliest versions of it, because you see, Eric, it doesn't have the fillet on the tail.
Yep.
See it back there? It doesn't have the fillet on the tail. So this is the -5 model. I believe 10s and 15s and 25s had the fillet on the tail, right? But when they started putting Packard Merlin engines in the B models and the B models, that changed it. But that's the story behind Merlin engines.
They put a super engine with super efficient in it.
You know, there's a flyable one of these down in Kissimmee, Florida. I can't remember the name of it. What's the name of the museum down there? Kermit Weeks.
Okay.
I can't remember the name of it. You know which one I'm talking about. He's got a flyable. He's got a later model, but it's flyable. He let me crawl through it. Yeah, the funny thing is he's got a flyable B-36 Marauder. And he says, I can't let you go in it. And he says, next time you come down, call, I'll let you go through it. I said, you know, what's the matter? You guys working on it? He goes, no, it's filled with black widow spiders. I know. He says, we had somebody out the other day, and the cockpit's infested by black widow. He says, we got to throw a can right in there.
Oh, that's like.
How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Good. So, this is the father of my priest corps instructor's wife.
Oh, wow.
Matter of fact, hang on. See the picture on the far right? Gal on the right? That's Beth Packard.
Oh, wow.
She's the wife of my earliest priest corps wife when I was growing up as a kid. And I actually got to meet this guy. And it was amazing to meet him in person. Amazing. Because he talked about some of these B-24 rates. Where's the picture of his cat? One of the prop rates. Wow. Yeah, see, there's the rolled up thing on the front of his cap.
Oh, yeah.
He had a prop blade go through the car that he was in, and it literally took the thing off his cap. Yeah, I got to meet this guy. And I was in high school, and he was out visiting his grandkids with his wife, Leon Packard, brother of Boyd K. Packard, who was a member of LDS Church leadership. They both were in the Air Force. And he's like planning and executing all these bombing missions. That is an amazing story. Retires as a brigadier general. I think he flew on one or two of the Pulaski raids. Yeah, just amazing stuff. Well, there's his DFC. Yeah, amazing guy. Humble, amazing guy.
Just
that Masters of the Air program was just freaking incredible. You know that? Looks like they're working on a weird turret. What have we got here? Oh man. See the samurai sword down here? The story I was told, Eric, when I was in Okinawa, Japan. You know, this is the flight suit that these guys wore. You have to remember, you know, unpressurized cockpit at 20,000 feet, it's cold. Right? You know what I understand? During the Battle of Okinawa, guys would gather up these swords. But the leadership said, and you have to remember, some of these swords have been in the families for hundreds of years. And you're talking shoguns and and samurais, warriors and things like that. And these swords have been in their family for hundreds of years. They took thousands of them, put them in a cave, blew the thing up, and sealed it off. Yeah. So when we were living over there, Kendo, we were living over there in Okinawa, Japan. And of course, now they have, you can buy a real one for like $5,000. For Father's Day, my wife says, I've got a very special gift for you. And I'm like, what do you mean special? I don't understand. And she brought it out. And she bought me a training one. Okay. It's got a steel blade on it. Okay. It's not sharp. I poke you with it. It's got.
Oh yeah.
Okay. It's got the tip on it, but it's just a practice sword. Okay. And we had a boom operator who unfortunately passed away after a very tragic motorcycle accident. I can picture his face, but I can't remember his name. But he'd been a kendo fighter when he was in the States and wanted to come to Japan so he could learn really how to do it. And so he came to Okinawa and went to a dojo, and they didn't want him at first because he was really good, okay? And of course, we don't want the gaijin around, we don't want him embarrassing us. And this guy was big too, okay? He was a big guy. God, I wish I could remember his name. He's a great boom operator. But they let him in, and he got to train with these people. Well, of course, training is competition too.
Yep.
And so he went to the Okinawa competition where guys and gals from the mainland come down and be in this competition, okay? And he was just destroying people because he's so much bigger than everybody else, and he was so good at it. And his sensei, his teacher, instructor, originally didn't want to take him on. I ain't doing this with you. I'm not doing this with you. You guys ain't guys. I'm not teaching I'm basically not teaching the white guy. But finally did. And he was one of the his dojo and his techniques were, I guess, some of the best. And he became really, really good. And he came in second.
Wow.
Because you can't let the guys in come in.
You can't. It's
All right. And this is the 90s, and that's just the way it was, okay? And he understood that, right? But he was so good at this that he'd win like within 3 or 4 strokes. And finally, they were trying to restrict him and do all kinds of crazy things because they don't want Gaijin winning their competition. But that's the story as I remember. All right? And you got to remember, this is 1994, 95 that this guy's there. But we were all, they were so proud of him.
yeah.
We're so proud of him, okay? Because here he is in Okinawa. He's learning all this stuff. And you have to understand, to become a kendo master, you have to master not only the sword, but the armor. And here's one of the things he told me, Eric, that was really fascinating. In order to get your black belt in this, you have to put on all 26 pieces of armor. You have to put them on in the right order. And you have to say what that piece of armor is for and why it goes in this order. He says it was one of the most grueling
Just rote
oral
memorization.
evaluations he'd ever had, with a guy living in Japan that does this, and had been doing it for years and years and years and years. I mean, decades. All right. But he was a black belt. Okay, became a black belt kendo guy, and unfortunately, like I said, he passed away after a terrible motorcycle accident. And he had his helmet on, but had a serious head injury that he didn't recover from. Didn't recover. So I've got one in my house. I've got the stand for it. I've got it on, I have it on an armoire that was built in Korea in 1900. Yeah, it's got a few little mouse holes in it and stuff like that, where they've chewed through it and everything. But that's what it's on top of. Anyway. Well, brother, let's go look at a P-38.
Let's do that. Who doesn't like a P-38?
Operation Vengeance. Let's talk about that. Here's another book that all of your subscribers need to go out and get. It's called Get Yamamoto. And it's the whole history of the planning and execution of Operation Vengeance. The P-38 intercept of the 2 Betty bombers that had Yamamoto in it. Now, there's been a Japanese movie made of this that shows this very well. He's sitting behind the pilot, okay? And they found him in the jungle, still both hands on top of his sword and everything, and a 50 cal shell, I think, it went through his jaw, through his chest. But this was the only airplane that could do that mission. So they didn't use J models like this one. It was earlier, like an E or a G model. But this had incredible range. And I was looking for the tanks. The fuel tanks, extra fuel tanks would go in here, and they were 175-gallon tanks. They were really big tanks. They had one on each side. And they had, I think, like 2 groups of P-38s. They flew at low level to go get him. And it was a very long mission. But the 38 was the only one that could do it. And what they did was, Charles Lindberg came over and taught them how to adjust the fuel mixture and everything so that they could make it longer, right? They could fly the airplane farther in endurance, because obviously Charles Lindberg knows how to do that. And there's a story about, they taught Charles Lindberg how to fly him, real quick academics. He was a terrific pilot. So they just said, okay, here's how you turn it on, turn it off, all those kind of things. And there is a rumor that they took him out on an actual mission. And the rumor is that he took shots at a zero, but I don't know if he shot it. And again, this is an unsubstantiated rumor, but it's talked about a lot, and it's talked about in the book. So Bob Lanphier was one of the shooters. Rex Barber and Lanphier were the two guys that were assigned to go take out the Betty bombers. So we had busted their code, their Japanese 25 code. And Yamamoto had this crazy habit of writing very detailed plans for what he was going to do, and we intercepted it. They had to go to Roosevelt. They're going, boss, Mr. President, we've got actionable intelligence on Yamamoto flying to Bougainville to see the troops. We know his route of flight. We know all of his timing. We know which Betty he's flying in, everything. And Roosevelt gave him the go-ahead to do it, okay? Because back then, a leadership target like that, they had to get permission, all right? This is like going after Bin Laden, all right? Or al-Zawahiri, or one of these guys. This is what it's like. And so they come and they fly. They intercept a bunch of zeros. One or two of our P-38s don't make it back. But Lanphier and Barber shoot down the two Betty bombers. And one explodes in the jungle, and one just crashes in the jungle. That was the one Yamamoto was in. So obviously they get a bunch of natives, the Japanese do, and they go out and they find the wreckage. And there's Yamamoto strapped in his chair, still holding his sword out in front of him with a 50 cal bullet through him. Dead. All right. They didn't announce for a while that they did this. And in Japan, they completely covered it up. All right? Completely covered it up. They didn't announce for like a year or more, if I remember right. Again, I'm going on.
It's a little fuzzy.
All right? But what happened that came out of this is there was this huge controversy of who shot him. Who did it? And Barber was saying, I did it. Lanphier was saying, I did it. Barber was saying, I did it. And it just went back and forth. And it kind of had some animosity between the two of them, right? Well, a couple of folks, very smart folks, went out there and said, okay, we've got their gun camera film. Let's go out, look at the holes in the airplane, and let's figure out who did it. And sure enough, the gun camera film on that Betty bomber, I think, matched with Rex Barber. And so they finally said, he's the guy that did it. That went on for decades. I'm talking decades. And it was finally, when finally they went out there, because the Betty bomber is still out there in the jungle, and it's a long walk out to it, but a lot of the natives will take you out there to it so you can see it. And people have wanted to go out there and gather it up, because it's kind of a shrine. And they just said, no, we're just going to leave it there. And I think it's been one of those nationalized shrines now. And they'll take people out there, but you can't touch it anyway. But that controversy went on for a very long time. Of no, I got him, until they looked at the gun camera film and then looked at the bullets holes in the airplane, and they figured out, I think it was Rex Barber was the guy that they gave the kill to. Or the confirmation to, right? This is my other favorite airplane, World War II, right? And, everybody says, oh, P-51. Yeah, P-51's cool. I'll take one of these any day. Hey, did you know that they got 2 flying mosquitoes now?
They do.
Planes of Fame Museum has got another one flying now. Well, brother, we have looked at every stinking airplane.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the 2 I flew during pilot training.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Eric, see the
tweet?
The blue and white, the tweet? 237? Right there? We had a special nickname for those airplanes. You know what we called them? Batmobiles. We call them Batmobiles. So I've got a lot of time in that airplane. Here, let me stand out in front of it. Right? Before we get the whole right. Here's one of the cool things about being at Strategic Air Command. Obviously, it's very expensive to fly a KC-135. So how are you going to give new co-pilots flying experience? Well, Training Command had too many airplanes, and they were cutting back on pilot training, and so they started in Strategic Air Command a program called ACE, Accelerated Co-Pilot Enrichment, is what it was called. And the ACE program at Pease, we had T-37s. So the cool thing about T-37s, Eric, was all I needed was 5,000 feet in a tower. That was the Air Force's restrictions on that airplane. 5,000 feet of runway in a tower. That's all I needed. Well, in the Northeast,
They're everywhere.
that's just about freaking every every airport, right? So, and Pease being near Boston, there was a lot of historic places we could go, a lot of places we could do things. Okay, so I flew ACE in that very airplane, in these airplanes, and I have to go look at my logbooks. I may actually have time in this one. Okay, but the ACE program was a license to steal during the Reagan era, because we could literally go anytime we wanted and go, hey, I want to check out an airplane. The co-pilots go, hey, let's go fly today. We're done mission planning. Let's go fly. And we'd like two hop somewhere. We'd go up to Plattsburgh and back, or up to Bangor and back.
Block Island, or
Yeah. We just the other one was Nantucket.
Nantucket.
We went down to Nantucket because it had 5,000 feet and a tower, and you could fly over the Kennedy compound, right? And we call it the 6,000-pound dog whistle, because that's really what it is, and it's kind of noisy, and it's got these little thrust attenuators that come out like this, and when it comes out, the engine sound changes, and it's louder. It's really annoying.
Is it derated?
Yeah, it's kind of like a speed brake, right? A power brake. So that you can keep the power up high, but these things, so like when you're configured with the flaps down and gear down, you still have a high power setting, but these little things would come out, and kind of block some of the thrust and everything. We created a low-level route that would take us from Pease to Vermont, and we'd land at Burlington where the guard unit was, and then Burlington to Bangor where there was the P3s, and then Bangor back to Pease, okay? And that took you about half a day, all right? The one I liked the most was Pease to Nantucket, do a couple approaches, land at Groton.
Yep.
Okay, which I'm sure you're very familiar
Very familiar with.
And the reason we'd stop at Groton is every month we had to get weighed in. And I was always on the ragged edge. I was always like 1-2 pounds under, because I was born big. I was 10 pounds, 14 ounces, and 23.5 inches tall when I was born, hence my call sign Sluggo. So I'd starve through the month, and we'd get weighed in, and then we'd hop into the Tweet and do that route and go down to Groton, Connecticut. Because at the FBO, the Forward Base of Operations, FBO, they had this hamburger club sandwich that you could buy. And it was a double-decker hamburger with a big pile of fries and a Coke, right? So you'd starve yourself through the month, and you go down here and make yourself sick on these cheeseburger club sandwiches, okay?
That sounds amazing.
And then we take off from Groton, Eric, and then we go to Albany.
Okay.
Folks, Albany is Satan's playground for pilots. I never went to Albany where something really, really weird happened. Every time we went to Albany, it was like, okay, what weird thing's going to happen, right? One time I went there and we landed right after a rainstorm. Matter of fact, we had to kind of hold our takeoff out of Groton to wait for this thunderstorm to go by. Well, there was a lot of water on the runway, and we hydroplaned because it's only a 6,000-pound airplane, and we could feel the airplane go whoop like this, and it turned about 20 degrees sideways. We're going down the runway on a wave of water, 20 degrees to runway heading. And then finally, we got to a dry patch, and the airplane started going this way. And of course, we had to do all these things. The tower says, "You guys okay?"
Thanks for helping.
Thanks for helping. All right. And Jim Tries, who I was flying with Peeps, we looked at each other, we started laughing. Okay, we're at Satan's playground for pilots. Later on, me and another co-pilot were in there, and they cleared an airplane to take off on the cross runway just as we landed. And so this 727 literally went over the top of our heads at about, I don't know, 150 feet.
That's an experience you don't want to.
We wanted you guys to get off. You didn't tell us that. Mark the tapes, because you know that you have to mark the tapes in order to go back and do the investigation. Okay, because it's a runway incursion. You know, oh, sorry guys. Okay, whatever. Okay, Satan's playground for pilots. I never went to Albany, Eric, where something really, really strange didn't happen. You know, thunderstorms. You know, you're sitting there waiting for it's all clear, and all of a sudden, boom, thunderstorm.
Yep.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. Crazy.
Yep, I lived on the Washington, D.C. for 6 years.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. You set your clock by. I don't know anything about beach 19s. Oh, the T-38. Here's one more story. I think we've done everything we can do here. The T-38, the white rocket. Here, let me get out for you. That was our advanced trainer right there. It's called the T-38 Talon. It is basically a fighter plane. Supersonic, extremely nimble, extremely dangerous to fly. We actually had a Class A mishap with the instructor and the pilot, student pilot both killed. Okay? And the instructor was flying the airplane when it crashed. Right? But that was one of the funnest airplanes I flew through my entire career. And the best portion of the T-38 syllabus is formation. And this is an image I will take to my grave. I'm in Oklahoma, which has massive thunderstorms.
Yes, they do.
And we had to wait for this one to pull off, and it was going south. And so finally it gets beyond 30 miles, and they say, okay, everybody take off. And we take off on a wet runway, but the air is saturated.
So humid.
It is so humid, and there's a lot of moisture. And as soon as we lift off like this, and there's lift under the wings, we got the big long ribbons off of the
vortices.
The vortex off the wingtips. And my instructor in the back seat, Joe Drew, goes, oh, Sluggo, this is going to be so much fun. And every time we pulled G and everything like that, vapor would come off the leading edges of the wings, off of the wingtips and everything. I mean, it was just fabulous. Well, one of the things that we do is called extended trail. An extended trail, you put the throttles to max, okay? Not in afterburner, but to max thrust without afterburner. And it's a tail chase. And all you do is use maneuvering to stay in a 120-degree cone within a quarter mile to half mile of the airplane in front of you. But you use angular cutoff to do that, right? And it's watching the airplane in front of you, knowing he's going to turn this way, or whatever, that allows you to catch up or fall back or whatever, right? But the cool thing about extended trail was we could do over-the-top maneuvers. So we could do loops, clover leaves, things like that. Well, it's my turn to lead. Dino, another student, is in the front seat of the other airplane, and so we make the switch. But now we're farther south, closer to Oklahoma City, where the thunderstorms are, and we do an over-the-top maneuver like this, and there's ribbons coming off of the wingtips of both jets. And Joe Drew is telling me, look, you can see his stick inputs in the vortexes, because you can see the wavy vortexes, and you know exactly how the stick was moving, okay? Because he says he's pumping the stick, okay? But you can see the airplane going like this, and you can see it on the wings, on the vortexes, okay? But off of his leading edges was a big cloud, condensation and everything. And we're upside down, looking down, looking up through the canopy, down at the ground, and down over Oklahoma City, the lightning was popping off like every 2 to 3 seconds. And one of these monster thunderstorms went to 60,000 feet.
Yep.
But it's still 30 miles away from us. It's not affecting us. It's moving away from us. And that's one of those images that I would take to my grave. Of seeing all that condensation. The vortex is going like this, and that particular flight. Matter of fact, we got on the ground, and I don't think we even debriefed it. Okay, we both got goods. We got downgraded for 1 or 2 things. Okay, downgraded goods, And all we did was talk about, oh man, remember this? Oh yeah, remember this? Oh yeah, remember that? You know, I mean, that was one of the funnest training flights I went on in my UPT career. Was that particular flight?
Just amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
I grew up about 60 miles southeast of Oklahoma City.
Oh, did you? Yeah, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. These big, huge thunderstorms. Brother, we've looked at every airplane in here.
We have.
What do you want to do?
Thanks for sticking around to the end. I appreciate all of the views, your comments, likes, the returning subscribers, and especially when someone has a personal connection to the aircraft and leaves a comment about it. I'd like to also again thank Mark Hasara for his guiding us around the museum, and to the Hill Aerospace Museum for maintaining this collection with such great care.